Aloha. This afternoon's subject is going to be animal rights and the rights of pet owners in Hawaii. And my guest this afternoon is Roy Epstein. Before we start, I would just like to mention why this subject has become a current subject in Hawaii. It really starts in Africa because I think most of us know that this famous lion in Zimbabwe was killed several weeks ago, and there's a worldwide outcry about the killing of this lion. But besides the lion being killed in Africa, there are also issues in Hawaii concerning animals. And this is the reason why we have Roy Epstein talking about animal rights and the rights of pet owners in Hawaii. Roy, first, can you tell us your professional background currently and in the past?
Well, currently I'm an attorney in Hawaii. I have my own private practice. My type of practice is called civil litigation. I represent both the plaintiff and the defendant. I've also been representing veterinarians, defending them against claims by their owners for the past about 22 or 23 years. I came to Hawaii about 25 years ago. Prior to that, I used to be a plaintiff's attorney in Beverly Hills. And before that, I used to be a CPA when I was practicing in Washington, D.C.
Roy, very interestingly, Beverly Hills. Did you represent famous actors and actresses and their pets?
That actually wouldn't have been me. When I was practicing in Beverly Hills, I was a plaintiff's attorney, but my cousin who I practiced with, he represented famous celebrities and one pet case.
To continue, what is your educational background?
Well, I went to undergrad in Washington, D.C. at American University, and that's where I got my BA, and then I became a CPA, and I practiced there for about 4 years. Then I went to Los Angeles, Southwestern University, where I graduated in 1987, and I practiced there for 4 years, again doing mostly plaintiff work. And then July 3rd, 1990, I came over here to Hawaii, and have been practicing in both just civil litigation since that time.
Nice. Thank you. Now, Roy, first of all, let us start with animal rights. In Hawaii, are there, under the law, are there animal rights as such?
Animals do have rights. Mm-hmm. However, Hawaii, unlike the way states are going now, is animals under Hawaii statute is only considered property. Therefore, it's the same as like with your house, with your car. They do have rights, but it's sort of limited, but they are starting to expand it recently, especially towards, you mentioned Cecil the lion.
Right.
You know, that type of abuse. And what's happened out here more frequently and more people know about is for dogs,
right,
whether they're left locked in the car, or whether they have the dog fights, for the pit bulls.
Right.
So they've established a lot of regulations and rights for animals.
These rights that you just talked about, are they Hawaii statutes, or is this city and county ordinances?
It's both. The statute as to animals which say they're property, there's a section called 663, and that one says that they're only property in terms of damages. Now, in terms of other rights,
such
as the best one is for animals to make sure that they're safe inside your car. Hawaii is the only state which says that you cannot have your pet on your lap without any type, on your lap at all, while you drive. It's illegal. And no other state has yet to follow this regulation. And they've expanded it now inside the car. If your pet is in the front seat, they have to be seat belted, or they have to have some type of tether so that if an accident happens, they won't be thrown around.
Is that a practical solution for the protection of a pet?
If you're going to have the pet inside your car,
right.
I mean, they like to run around.
Right.
if it's in the front seat, they need to be somehow restrained, otherwise they're gonna jump on you, distract you, and that's gonna cause an accident. In the back seat, they don't need to be restrained, because you know how animals go back and forth,
Right.
and they wanna put their head out the window. So it's for the safety of the animal as well as the safety of the driver. And in terms of ordinances, yes, there are various ordinances in each county, whether it's here on Oahu, Kauai, Maui, they each have their own ordinances with regards to various types of animals, whether it's dogs, cattle, cats, chickens.
Well, Roy, you may be familiar. Recently, there have been news about feral chickens, and it's something that's becoming a prevalent problem in the neighborhood. What is your thoughts on the feral chickens that seem to be roaming around, and they seem to be multiplying in some areas of, say, the city and county of Honolulu? Are there laws as such?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned about the chickens. What had happened is there used to be a entity that was hired to take care of all the chickens, because if you don't address the problems, it'll expand. And this one company had been hired to catch the chickens,
Yes.
so that they wouldn't continue to populate.
Okay.
Then in 2013, that company lost the contract, and for over 2 years, up until July 15th of this year, nobody took care of the chickens. And on Oahu, it is illegal to catch a chicken and kill it. You can catch it, and then you would have to call the police. You can't even call Humane Society. You have to call the police to have them pick up the chicken. If you catch the chicken and you eat it in Oahu, it's illegal.
Is that a crime?
It actually is a crime. Animals, feral animals or wild animals are protected. And it's not just chickens, by the way. Whether you do it to a cat or any other animal
That's feral.
that's feral, meaning it's not registered, then they run free. But recently, as I said, on July 15th, a local company,
Yes.
Sandwich Isles, just got the contract, which says they're setting out traps to try and catch the chickens
Right.
so that they won't be, keep multiplying. They will even give people traps to try and catch them. And my understanding in the recent article I just read is the first day out, they caught 5 chickens. Just right off the top. When they catch the chickens, this is the interesting part, if they catch the chickens and they're healthy, my understanding is that people can go to either the extermination company or to the Humane Society, wherever the chickens go, and they're allowed to get the chickens, and if they're healthy, then they would be used as food. If they're not healthy, they would be euthanized. But that begs the question is, why can't I catch the chicken and eat it? But you can't, if they catch you, the ordinance says you would be fined. It's actually a misdemeanor, yes.
Let me ask you this. Why the police department and not the Humane Society? My logic tells me you would call the Humane Society. What can the police do?
Good question. Because Humane Societies are sort of quasi-governmental because they are subsidized.
Right.
The Humane Society has indicated they will have nothing to do with it because nobody owns the chicken. And if anything happens to the chicken, again, it's a domestic animal. It's not a exotic animal, which they might come out for. But the police have to be called first. And if the police find it's necessary, they'll call the Humane Society. But if you call the Humane Society, they're just going to say, call 911. They will not handle the problem. Or actually now, they'll tell them to call this company who's been hired to take care of the chickens.
Day or night?
What?
You call the company at night?
That's a good question. Hadn't thought about it, but usually chicken problems is when the rooster crows.
Yeah.
I would think that's during the
Early
daytime,
morning.
Early morning.
Yeah.
That's a great question that I don't know the answer to. But I'm sure if you call them up and it's wrong, you'll find out very quickly that
I
they
see.
shouldn't be called.
Oh, I see. Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You know, the crowing of roosters in the urban area of Oahu
Right.
is a problem.
Yes.
and people complain about it. So am I to understand you call the police department to do something about the crowing of roosters?
Well, you're sort of jumping the gun.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it's a problem, but the
Yeah.
first thing the police are gonna say, like any type of noise complaint, like with your neighbors, they're gonna
Right.
say, where is this noise coming from? Can you, in this case, point out this chicken to me? If that's the case, yes, you can theoretically call them and say, this is the rooster, it's over there, it's a feral chicken, get him for me. But
Yeah.
if it's just, I'm hearing noise, you have to identify specifically where it's coming from.
I see.
Otherwise, the police are gonna say, we can't do anything about it.
But it is a problem for neighbors in the urban areas of Honolulu.
Yes,
Yeah. And it is not one that goes away. It's a problem that is constant. You know, a rooster crows every morning, so.
but you have to find out where the rooster is. If you're telling me that rooster's on somebody's property, you could say, that's that guy's rooster. They could be in trouble, except the noise ordinance in Oahu,
See.
or at least the local ordinance here,
Yes.
is that rooster would have to crow for 10 minutes nonstop. Then you'd have to call the police. You can't call Humane Society again, because then it becomes a violation of an ordinance of noise pollution.
Noise pollution. I understood also that there is a specific animal nuisance law. Is that a state law or city law?
Well, each county can come up with their own ordinance, but pretty much they all have the same ordinances. The ordinance says that any animal, and usually it goes towards dogs, but it can be towards any animal that continuously makes noise, say barking by a dog for 10 minutes straight, or is nonstop intermittently for 30 minutes, you can call the police and lodge a complaint as for animal nuisance, in which case the police come out and then they could either cite you or ask you to quiet down your dog. That's from the criminal side.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to make a civil complaint, you have to call the Humane Society. The Humane Society will contact somebody. They will come out to that person's residence unannounced and listen to hear if that dog has made continuous noise for 10 minutes straight. If they do, they will issue you a citation. And if you have, I'm not sure if it's 2 or 3 citations in a row, then there could be action against you.
That would be a civil or criminal?
That would be civil. It would be a civil fine against you. And by the same thing, and I just happened to look this up, if somebody has too many dogs on their property, and apparently in this county, you can't have more than 10 adult dogs on anybody's property. And then if that's a problem, again, you can call in the police first, we'll call the Humane Society and remove the excess dogs.
That's a very interesting point, Roy, because as you know, there are many for-profit dog breeding businesses. Do they call it dog mills or, you know, something similar to a dog mill?
Right.
And then these dog mills become newsworthy because they are in confined quarters. And what happens to the no more than 10 dogs per property rule?
Well, there's 2 parts to that. First
All
of
right.
all, if it's a business and properly licensed, well, of course, they can have more than 10, assuming that they're following all the regulations. If it's an individual who just wants to try and breed dogs, there is a slight exception in the 10-dog rule. If the dogs have to be under 4 months, because any dog having a litter, you know,
Right.
it happens. And it also has to have a complaint. And the dog mills, the problem with that is a lot of them mistreat the dogs. As you said, they'll have them
Right.
confined. They won't give them enough food. They'll
Right.
barely keep them alive so that they can sell them for profit. That becomes animal abuse. And that is a criminal offense for animal abuse, for failure to properly feed, water, keep them in confinement. If you don't clean up their feces or anything else like that, they can be and have been criminally charged out here.
We will take a break at this time. If you have any questions, we urge you to contact ThinkTech Hawaii with your questions. Thank you.
Here's the deal. I'm Jay Fidel. I'm the host of Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. which is the Energy Policy Forum's program on Wednesday. That's how we call Wednesday Energy Wednesday. We call it Energy Wednesday every Wednesday. Are you surprised? Okay, and we try to get guys like Jim Alberts here from Hawaiian Electric who can tell us what's really going on in energy. We want to be informed. It's so important. It's the most important initiative in our state. Clean energy is major, okay? And that's why we cover it on this show. That's the deal. What do you think, Sharon?
I think that's great. That's why we're here every Wednesday from 4 to 5, and we hope you all join us so we can hear people like Jim coming on our show and co-host Ray Starley from Hawaii Energy.
Okay, Jim, you've been here today. You've seen this. You heard what she said. What do you think?
I think it's a tremendous opportunity for people to come together and talk about the issues. Oftentimes, there isn't a good forum to bring these key issues out into the public, and this is a tremendous way to go about it. And the activity of this show is essential to keep talking about energy because, as you said, it's such an essential part of our lives that we need to pay attention to it and we need to think about the future.
Okay, Ray, your turn.
Well, this is a special time in the history of Hawaii where we're making some pretty radical changes in the way we use energy and generate energy. And this show is the one place you can count on coming to every Wednesday and hearing something about the latest issues that are on the table, being discussed, that will affect us all going forward. So come join us, and if you have some ideas you want to share with us about energy, give us a call and let us know. We'll put you up here and let you talk for an hour. So come see us.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Jim. It's great to be, from ThinkTech's point of view, it's great to have this show. We love the show. It's our most important show. So come around and listen to us 4 to 5 on Wednesday. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Roy, let's go back to this subject of animal cruelty that you were talking about before we went off the air.
Yes.
To go back to the dog mills again, puppy mills, how does one become aware of these problems? You know, I always, they're out at some rural area, nobody's around,
Right.
and yet somebody complains about the puppy mills, and I'm kind of curious, who reports these?
The only time anything about a puppy mill is reported is one, if somebody buys from them and there's usually something wrong with the dogs. Because one of the problems with puppy mills is a lot of inbreeding, because they try to get purebreds, and people find out they're either not purebreds, they could be multiple type breeds, they can have defects in them, and the owner who sells it to them refuses to reimburse them or take care of the dogs. So when they sell somebody a poi dog and you're spending money on a regular dog,
Right.
those people complain. If there's some type of neighbors, and usually it's a really bad smell. You hear the dogs crying because they're cooped up. But there are a lot out here that people just don't say anything.
Let's go to this another interesting subject that I've always thought about is several years ago, and this is about animal rights as such. When you said technically they don't have rights as such,
Right.
but remember that circus elephant that escaped from the circus and ran around Kaka'ako, and he was shot by the police department.
Right.
Maybe I should start by asking, what could have been done to capture the elephant without having to shoot the elephant?
That was Tyke. Tyke the elephant.
Tyke,
Yes. That was
okay.
at Blaisdell, and he pulled free.
Yes.
And once he got out, the problem was an elephant, because it's so large, out here, short of the zoo having any type of equipment to
Right.
try and bring down the elephant by tranquilizers, because that's the only thing you can do at the point, at least with this one. Once he got
with
out
Tyke,
with Tyke. Once
right.
Tyke got out into Kaka'ako, there was nothing to calm him down. There was no trainer. There was nothing. And my understanding was this was the first time anything like that ever happened in Hawaii. So out here in Hawaii, it's a smaller community. They weren't really prepared. And Tyke was running rampant. He was injuring people and property. And when people or property damage is occurring, their rights are paramount to the animals. It will always happen that way. So in order to bring down the elephant, they had no choice but to shoot him.
I see. But that elephant,
Right.
poor elephant,
Yeah.
if we were in a law school class,
Yes.
what rights would that elephant have under those circumstances? I mean, he cannot speak or.
Right. Well, his rights it would have been while he was still in the circus and he was being mistreated. And
Yes.
in fact, Tyke made national news, when it happened such a long time ago,
Right.
that animals within circuses have been known to be mistreated
Oh,
by our definition today. The trainers there felt that there was no other way to handle the animals or train them, but to be as aggressive with them. And I'm not sure if it's in Tyke's case, but there are numerous cases you hear about that, that will beat them, starve them, or however they chain them, such to a point where they just lose control of themselves. So that's where you always hear Humane Society or people come and will inspect or investigate circuses. Because that happens a lot now, whether it's in the circus or in movies and TV sets, that there's somebody out there, either the ASPCA or the local Humane Society checks to see if the animals are treated well.
that raises another interesting question. Lawyers, when we talk about rights and bringing a claim or some kind of enforcement rule, we talk about jurisdiction. Does the Humane Society have jurisdiction over an elephant owned by a zoo?
Yes. If complaints are brought, it's either, like I said, the ASPCA or usually the Humane Society, and there are various cases I've seen here. There was a famous one in Maui of somebody starving cattle. That because, they couldn't afford to do anything, so they starved the cattle, or they just let the cattle run free. Humane Society, because who else could bring an action? Humane Society brought an action against the farmer or the owner for cruelty to animals. And I don't remember if he went to jail or he had a very significant fine for cruelty to animals. So the Humane Society will step in and they will act as the plaintiff on behalf of the animal.
That's very interesting because unless someone were to represent the animals on behalf of the animals,
Yes.
the animals would not have any kind of protection.
Right. Another example would be PETA.
Who's that?
PETA, P-E-T-A. They're an animal rights activist organization.
Nationally?
Nationally. They are the ones who used to say fur is murder. They'll do anything, they will step in and they've brought numerous suits, just like the, Sierra Club or whatever, to
Right.
protect the rights of animals if they feel that they're being abused. They can be contacted. They have legal representation. Either they do it themselves or they'll hire somebody locally to represent the rights of the animal.
Is that a non-profit organization that's a subsidiary or branch of a national organization?
Well, PETA is the national branch. It's, I think I know it has to do with ethical treatment of animals.
What kind of treatment?
Ethical.
Oh, ethical.
As a matter of fact, what they do, the best example is for testing on rats or on rabbits, for the cosmetics. They're the ones who brought all the lawsuits saying these animals feel pain, you're testing on them, it's illegal.
The animals in a laboratory?
Yes, because, we don't see them, but they exist.
Right.
And they've brought numerous lawsuits saying, you don't blind an animal, a rabbit, for like mascara or for eyeliner.
Well, what were the results, if any?
They actually prevailed. It's a lot of the companies have either eliminated or have significantly reduced their use of animals in testing of cosmetics. And it spawned a whole new industry, cruelty-free cosmetics. Right. So it actually caused people to be encouraged, or companies to be encouraged, to only sell items that do not rely upon animal testing. So it actually helps everybody.
Why would it help the consumer?
Well, people who feel that animals have rights, and it's cruel to test on animals.
Oh, I see.
Up until these products came out, they had no choice. It's either wear no makeup or wear makeup that you found out where it's not tested on animals.
I see.
So that, and not only that, if you think about it from an economic standpoint, it helped generate a multi-billion-dollar industry of the cruelty-free cosmetics and clothing lines and everything else. So it actually benefited not only the animals, it's also benefited consumers.
Consumer.
Mhm.
Well, let's jump to the other subject that is critical for us this afternoon, and that is, what are the rights of a pet owner in Hawaii? And maybe, Roy, you can start by explaining what pet rights are there, if any, of a owner.
Oh, the owner.
Yes.
Well, the owner, when they have a pet,
Yes.
you know, one of the things, because we talked about the noise ordinance, the, you know,
Right.
the 10-minute rule.
Right.
You're allowed to have your pet go out. You're allowed to keep him on your property. There's nothing against the law to allow a dog to bark, because you want a dog to protect your property. So you, as the owner, can tell the person complaining, well, my dog is barking only because there's people there and it's protecting.
Mhm.
You can't try and sue me. You can't try and make me get rid of my dog, because that happens a lot. You know, the dog is there for protection. So the animal owner has a right to allow their animal to roam free, not be confined, not stay inside.
Within the confines of his property.
Of his property, yes,
Right.
whether it's fenced,
Right.
or if they're not fenced, you have to make sure that the animal is tethered so it can't run out, because if an animal gets loose, in this state, there is no one free bite. If your animal
I
bites
see.
another human being, there's liability. If he bites another dog, it's just as bad. It's funny, between animals, they actually have rights. You can't have one dog biting another. It could cause that animal to be tested, and in certain cases, for the animal to be put down, the one that bit the other animal.
Oh, I see. What about, that's very interesting, because if one pet bites another pet,
Yes,
if I'm the owner of the pet who was bitten,
yes,
I would have rights against the biting dog.
yes. You would, because one
Oh,
is
yeah.
if you bring the dog into the veterinarian, depending on the bite, the veterinarians are supposed to report it. Depending on how serious it is. I mean, dogs nip at each other all the time, but when one dog kills another dog, you know, and it doesn't have to be contrary to popular belief. You know, pit bulls, Dobermans, or what they consider
right.
dangerous dogs, inherently dangerous dogs, that's a fallacy. You know,
Fallacy in what sense?
well, the biggest one is everybody keeps saying pit bulls are the most dangerous animals. They kill people, they do that, they bite most. Reality is, little chihuahuas and the smaller dogs, they bite people more frequently than the bigger animals. Not as bad,
Right.
but in terms of biting and causing stitches, the smaller animals, because there are more of them, cause the problem. Pit bulls, unless they're antagonized or unless they're in, you know, the dog fights and they're brought up very poorly, they're very loyal. They don't bite others. They're very friendly, but they are territorial. So if you come onto my property and I have a pit bull, you know, you don't have a right as a trespasser to say, well, your dog shouldn't have bit me. That's what the dog's there for.
Well, we're going to take another break at this time. Any questions you may have about your pets, please contact us at ThinkTech Hawaii. We'll take a break again. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. I'm the host of Center Stage here on ThinkTech Hawaii. Center Stage airs every Wednesday at 2 o'clock, and of course you can check out our archives on YouTube or on ThinkTech Hawaii anytime you like. Why should you do that? Because this is an arts show that I believe is making a difference in lives. We talk with artists of various ilk. We talk with painters and writers, playwrights, novelists, poets, sculptors, dancers, you name it, directors, actors, of course. And we don't only talk about what people do, but we talk about how they do it. And my favorite part of the conversation, we talk about why they do it. And it's really common on this show to hear people say, wow, I didn't think about it that way. And it's very common to hear people afterwards who have seen the show say the same thing. And I hear all the time that people are inspired by the conversations that we have. So why don't you join us and be inspired too? That's Center Stage on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock. We'll see you Center
Oh, no.
Stage.
Can you go for the bar?
We are back again on the rights of a pet owner in Hawaii. And our guest this afternoon is Roy Epstein. Now, Roy, back to let's take, because of the time factor here,
Okay.
let's move along. And let's talk about when you take your pet, cat, dog, I guess bird,
Right.
to a veterinarian, what are your rights as a pet owner vis-a-vis the veterinarian? Is that a contractual relationship?
Well, there is a contract when you bring the animal to be treated. There are some statutes with regards to veterinarians, but there is also a national standard for the veterinarians in terms of the treatments they provide to the animal, what they need to disclose to you, what should be in the contract, as to what they should tell you when you treat your animal. Because fortunately, veterinary medicine has gotten better over time, but conversely, it's also gotten extremely expensive. So one of the things is veterinarians need to tell you how much is it going to cost you for treatment of your animal.
Is that a statutory duty on the part of the veterinarian when you go to get veterinarian services, that he tells you or she tells you
Well,
how much the services would cost?
right, if it's beyond the standard checkup. If you're going to go and they have to perform surgery. Nowadays, a lot of dogs go for chemotherapy. They go for, I know for birds, for example. One case I handled, the bird broke its bone and had to have arthroscopic pin, little micro pin going in, which was very expensive. They have to give you an estimate. They also have to tell you that there are risks, just like with a human being. What could happen once your dog goes under surgery?
I'd be interested to know what kind of bird it was.
That was
a large bird, small bird.
It was a newborn bird. It was a cockatoo. And I don't know if it's cockatoo or cockatiel, whichever was the bigger one.
Yes.
It was a very small bird. And these birds, because I'd wondered too, because they cost $1,500. This was 10 years ago to fix the bird. And I'm like, why would you do that? Those birds go for anywhere up to $6,000, and they live 35 to 40 years.
Oh my God,
So,
that is a long longevities.
Right, and in that case, this is a good example of you asking your rights. The veterinarian who originally had the bird when it was small, it's alleged that when he's handling him, because it's so fragile, he broke the bird's foot.
Oh my. Well, let me ask you along that line. Are they specialists among the veterinarians? Like for humans, there would be surgeons as well as family doctors?
Yes, as a matter of fact, nowadays, originally, let's go back, say 10 years, because there are now specialists, but 10 years ago, there maybe was 1 or 2 specialists on the island. There was one orthopedic specialist in Oahu. There was one on Maui who had left. More recently, there are now veterinarians who only deal with orthopedic for the hip. There's one that only deals with the jaw. There's an issue as to whether or not for, I don't say infectious disease, but if they have a skin rash, they actually have one for that, whether it's a skin disease or not. The only bad problem that we still have in this state is if you need to have the animal's blood tested.
Yes.
Very specific testing, like Lyme disease. That's the one that I've seen. It is not done in this state. For at least the smaller domestic animals, has to be sent to the mainland. It is not done here.
So the pet has to go to the mainland to be treated.
The blood has to be sent over
Oh,
there.
the blood has to be treated.
Because they don't know what's
to
wrong.
be sent.
Right, they have to wait for the analysis, it comes back, and then they can make the determination. And in the meantime, they have no idea what's going on with the pet.
So where is the pet treated during that meantime?
They treat them as best they can, then whether, depending on what's wrong with the dog, they'll either stay with the vet, or normally they'll go home. Because once they get the blood work, comes back usually 1 to 3 days, or usually 3 days, then they'll call back in the owner and say, okay, this is what's wrong with you, these are your options that are available.
Let me just talk about something that has always been a controversy in Hawaii, and that is, if you bring in, I don't know about cats, but if you bring in your dog to Hawaii, there is a time period when the dog must be confined at wherever it is, confined.
The animal quarantine.
Yeah. How long is that?
It's actually, fortunately, again, given the advances of science, that has been reduced. It used to be as long as 60 days, when you'd have to go to the animal quarantine, up, I think it's by Halava.
Right.
And not only is the animal quarantined, you had to pay for the animal while it's quarantined. Again, way back, the only time a dog could come over without quarantine is if it came from Australia. Because since Hawaii is the only state has never had a case of rabies, ever. So that's why the quarantine. It's now been reduced depending if you do all the treatments and you follow all the regulations from the various states. It's been reduced to either 30 days or 15 days, but it still has to be quarantined because the rights of the other animal, because it's actually the rights of the animals in Hawaii, that they don't be exposed to rabies or any other form of disease that a mainland or international animal could have.
So am I to understand that there is no rabies in Australia?
I don't know if there's in Australia, but, and I believe it's either Australia or New Zealand, there was the recent case with Johnny Depp. He tried bringing his
That's
animal.
right.
He brought his animal in from either Europe or from here. He tried to bring him without quarantine. In Australia, like here, said no. And he tried to fix it, but it's still an ongoing case of bringing an animal in without trying to sneak an animal in, which does happen out here. Usually it's exotic animals, but other animals as well.
And I would presume that most pet owners who bring in their pets from outside of Hawaii and have the dogs quarantined have no other option than to have the pet quarantined at this
Well, it's interesting.
present time.
Interesting you say that. It depends. If it's a large animal and how long it's been gone. If you take an animal, I have a friend who has a pet, and she will go to the mainland.
Right.
And she's brought her pet, and it's been no more than a week. But she's been able to bring the pet, have him come back. The animal has to be checked out at the airport to make sure everything's okay, all the paperwork, but does not have to go to quarantine because it's a very short period of time. It's not an animal that was born and raised in another state. It was one just, you're going on a trip, you can take your animal with you.
Is there a procedure where if prior to your departure to wherever outside of Hawaii, you can have that dog certified by a veterinarian to say that this dog was born and raised and maintained continuously in Hawaii, so that when you come back, you don't have this problem of having to go through the administrative process of getting the dog admitted again?
I'm not that versed in it, but I believe it would be because you have to, in order to bring the animal outside the state, you have to prove it's your animal.
Right.
So normally you would get a veterinarian's certificate, which would show all that, actually I do know they have to have all their shots updated and everything updated. So I think that sort of gets you around the quarantine issue. And that the dog, when it comes back, is healthy.
Boy, and if this is too sensitive, you can say, it's a very sensitive subject. If your pet is treated by a veterinarian and say something were to happen to the pet unexpectedly, can you make a claim against the veterinarian?
Yes, I have been representing veterinarians. I've never represented the other way. But, and there are cases where if a veterinarian does something wrong, the
Yes.
first thing you do is you try to speak with the veterinarian.
Right.
In my experience, almost all of them will try to work with you and try to, if there's a bill, if it's their problem, they'll either help work reduce it or willing to forego collection. But if you cannot come to an agreement, absolutely, you have every right to bring a claim to the veterinarian with regards to what the individual feels would be a malpractice, that he did something below the standard to the animal. And again, the problem is pet owners are very emotional, more so than regular between human and humans. They are so attached that sometimes they lose their objectivity. But having said that, you should try to work with the veterinarians because they are caring people.
That takes us to the second aspect of a claim against the veterinarian. Like, as far as humans are concerned, we have a right to sue a physician for malpractice. And there are measures of the damages that we can claim. Now, as to a pet, what is the measure of a claim against the veterinarian for malpractice?
It's a good question. As I said, pets are considered property.
Right.
As property, the most that you're entitled to, starting in a broad sense, is what is the value of the dog? If it's a poi dog, it's really not going to be much. The other claims that people make are for what are the veterinary bills? You tried to work on my dog, it didn't work out, so they want back the money they paid, assuming they paid it. Some try to expand beyond that, saying, well, my dog was going to be a breeding dog. This is the value had it been bred.
It would like to be similar to horses that won the Kentucky Derby then.
American Pharaoh, yes.
Right.
But you have to prove that the dog was a breeding dog, assuming that was the case, and that it's a purebred, and that it could have bred. It has happened once in my practice here where somebody had made that claim, and the resolution on that one is we got the person a new dog, the same type of quality dog, you know, and it wasn't a cheap dog, but we tried to compensate the individual. And unfortunately, in that case, that person not only, you know, to give an example of what you can't get, he wanted all the money he's ever spent on the dog since he was born, the feeding, the veterinary bills, for the 3 years that the dog was alive. He wanted everything back, and you're just not entitled to it.
Roy, it's been a very, very interesting interview this afternoon. I know that I've learned quite a bit by your information on pets and pet rights, and maybe we can have you back again on some of these interesting subjects. But I wish to thank you very much for coming this afternoon.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
I'm glad I was able to be of some service.
Thank you very much.